I would argue that there needs to be parental licensing today, more today than then. Because just like one of the things you said earlier was that a lot of the behaviors that parents had toward children was generally accepted at that particular time. You know, in my days, I was born in '76, so we were coming right out of the paddle in the corner of the teacher's, desk era. And there wasn't as much like teachers using spanking and as that type of correction. I as a matter of fact, I never experienced it, but I did hear stories of that being done probably like 3 years before me, 4 years before me.
And I would say in the U.S., probably in the South and in other areas where it was deemed more traditional, that was phased out way later.
Well, from your, do you remember like teachers?
Oh yes, I've met some paddles in my day. Yes,
okay.
It was very common. It was definitely common through my elementary years.
You had said I wanted to come back to it actually because you had mentioned effects that y'all were discussing, and I'd like to kind of what do you see today in yourself? Like did you like how and see, there's two parts. Like I want to know how often, but also like what kind of things do you see in yourself where like today where you go, okay, that's where this came from, abuse as a child. I see this in myself.
Well, there was a positive aspect. I'll go with the positive first. It really came from a self-determination to not emulate what I saw. I saw my father beat my mother.
Probably many times.
Oh, of course. Many heard it, even many more than I saw it. So, and I remember telling myself I would never do that. Even though, as I grew up, I recognized I'm very prone to do that. But I actually grew up even as a young teen, and even in so-called relationships, that was something I made sure to stay far away from. Had to run from sometimes. I was even locked up before by someone in a home. It just seemed like I would meet people that would almost try to tempt me to do such a thing. So it was quite a challenge until I really developed more self-control to learn more control of myself. But I did determine that I was not going to be that person that I at that time was really pointing my fingers at my father. As I grew older, I took those fingers back. I didn't understand the pressures he was under as a boy. But, and the effects of it, wow, there was a lot. I'm trying to think of the earliest that was probably major. Was when I first went to college. I never finished college. My parents really didn't have the money to send me to college, but they were trying to anyway. And then I was in college with no books for weeks, so I was well behind the other students, and I didn't have but half a brain anyway. But I would come home I just remembered another story. I would come home from college. I went to college in the same city that I lived in. So I would drive back home. Now college, I went to College of Charleston. It's a very difficult school. It's not a cakewalk. It's a lot of studying you have to do. And there's no such thing as studying when you have a household that is there's abusive relation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No such. So as far as accomplishing great grades, those young people that have been able to do it, my hat's off to them, big time. I could not handle it, so I did a lot of leaving the home to find, just some kind of inner peace. But it surely affected my educational level. I can even think back even to athletics. I would walk home from school, and I could be a block and a half away from my home, and I could just hear that little noise, and I would go, nah. And I would get closer to the corner about a block away to my home, and I could hear that voice again. It's like I could almost feel my mother's voice.
Right.
I think I don't have to finish the rest of the story.
Yeah.
As I got closer,
It's like,
it was taking place, and blue lights, the whole thing. I saw plenty of policemen and so forth. So I experienced a lot of those things, and now I'll just fast forward to where I'm at now, 57 years of life. I still struggle with hearing a man. If I hear a man and his wife fighting, if living in apartments near people and so forth, I struggle with it big time. I never did like it. It just bothers me. I can't take it. I can't giggle at it. I'm not going to say it takes me back to the childhood, but it certainly brings up those eerie feelings. So, kind of hard to explain it.
Yeah.
But that is truly what I
leaves a
went through.
mark.
It's been my
Yeah, I understand
leaves it
entirely because it sort of rekindles those same feelings that you had as a kid.
Yeah.
But it also just becomes such an integral part of your being.
Exactly.
And I could see you kind of like getting emotional about it just from the start here. And you're talking about, how many years separated you are from that. Clearly, it stays with you.
Sure, I left my parents' home when I was 18.
Okay. And I think that comes from how important it is for a father figure to be in a child's life, like the way children are, specifically sons, but children are, and their formulation, they have to have that powerful father figure to kind of latch on. And without that, that just adds to, like when you have a negative figure, and that just adds to, because it's so integral to the formulation of like how a child grows and learns and forms themselves and who they become. Specifically, male children, because they kind of pattern themselves after their father, but specifically who they become and how their brain even at a cellular level, like how their brain is forming.
Yeah.
All of that is integral for them to be able to have that example there. When you have a horrible example, I mean that's just adding on to already the fact, like you're talking about the trauma and all of that on there.
An interesting relation to your comment. I think most of the abuse in my household I would relate to alcoholism. So I kind of did have a father figure out of my father, as long as he wasn't drunk.
Right.
So I had that guy, but I also had that guy I didn't want to attach to at all. Yeah, so you couldn't trust him.
And see, that's the issue. Because children need
stability.
They need stability. They need that. And it's akin to, also it's similarly akin to them being abused themselves, right? Which is the issue of, they learn. And one interesting thing I was reading about, I read about in the past, is how actually, children who are abused learn the ability to kind of read other people's emotions better than a lot of other people do.
Yes.
Because it's like a
Nothing's
safety
predictable.
No, because it's a safety net mechanism as a child. They have to be able to they're kind of forced to, because when your parents come home and it's like they lose their temper and you need to know. They have to be able to read and know.
Yeah, you can be in your room and hear the style of walk that they're walking and know exactly the mood that they're in and know exactly what you're
very attuned, very sensory adept in that way. And it's kind of, I think it would be kind of similar to that, how you would shoot, I just lost it.
Well, I tell you, I would agree with your comment. The thing about my not having the so-called proper father figure, again, it goes back to the community. I had other father figures that I was able to latch hold to. Not necessarily family members, but it was the benefit of I had coaches in sports that took up that role that my father would never take with me. He didn't play ball with me, but I had coaches that would play ball with me. At that time, it was important to me. So I was able to somehow come through that process, that's how I got out of high school. I was a pretty sound young man in my mind. I wasn't mixed up and confused by the time probably I got well into puberty, I was well used to dealing with my parents' situation. I was well seasoned by then. So, because I dealt with it for most of my young life.
So you're saying around like 17, 18, you were well seasoned in that.
Oh, I would say a little before that.
16.
I would
15,
say
16.
14, 15. I think I was 15 years old. I started driving school bus. We had 2 school buses in my yard, my brother's and mine, and we were both dealing with the same thing. But yes, no, I was well seasoned by then. I knew I was on the way to adulthood. I had enough accomplishments, even without my father being there to help me with those accomplishments. That's what I'm trying to say, where I felt, okay, I can hold down possibly this little bus driving job. I can still get my grades. 1 or 2 teachers filled some gaps too. I mean, that's why I say the educational system has a challenge, but even back then, just the right nudge by the right person at the right time, right? That word fitly spoken, right? It was enough for me to go, you know what? I can do like the smart kids can do. So I started taking college prep classes and, that kind of stuff. And not that I had some great accomplishment out of it, but it was enough to get me through. I didn't fail because I was abused. I think the children today are taught that they are a victim, that they can't succeed because they're abused. Right. And that in itself is a problem.
Listen, guys, we are doing great things here at the Lamplight Productions. And you can be a part of it for the low price of $0.00. Because all you got to do is subscribe. Ring the bell, ding dong, you can't go wrong. Or don't. It's a free country. Do whatever you want. So I don't know how you can live with yourself.